This is Alison, and she is a freelance software developer who makes weird math apps. Uh, right at home here. She also enjoys solving and constructing variant Sudoku puzzles. And I am excited to hear what you have to say. So, Nat, welcome to the stage.
Hi, thank you. Um,
Ooh, your audio is
oh,
kind of robotic.
robotic.
Is any
Um,
y'all hearing that too?
is this working? Am I good? Hello?
Yeah, it sounds weird, like it's not plugged in completely or something. But yeah,
Let me try to change stuff in StreamYard. Sorry.
no worries.
Is this better?
Ooh, yes, that's perfect.
Okay, thanks. All right. Okay. So, uh, guys, gals, and non-binary pals of Roguelike Celebration. My name is Nat Allison, and today I am here to present to you all a defense of handcrafted Sudoku. As many of you will know, Sudoku is the logic puzzle where you place uh, the digits from 1 to 9 in a 3 by 3 grid so that each digit repeats once in every row, column, and box. It is sort of known as the ultimate procedural puzzle. A lot of newspapers, the New York Times, for example, like publishes Sudoku's daily. Um, a lot of publishers have collated giant books of computer-generated Sudoku for people to do when they're bored at the airport or sitting on the toilet. Um, and it's a sort of puzzle genre that has kind of a very predefined set of rules that you can work for it. For most of these auto-generated puzzles, that you have a specific set of instructions and algorithms that you can go, okay, this digit appears in this row, this doesn't appear in this row, so you can put that in, and it gets really boring really quickly. Um, in fact, Jack Schlesinger last year made another Sudoku talk at Road Celebration called Your Puzzle is a Secret Dungeon, where he goes through the process of generating these computer-generated Sudoku and how to do that well, and relates that to being a roguelike. Relates that to a roguelike, and it's a very good talk. But I am here today to present a sort of counterexample. Because what if I told you that even though Sudoku is kind of this super procedural puzzle, there is a growing, thriving community of puzzle solvers and constructors that enjoy very handcrafted Sudoku, I myself being among them. So this is what this talk is going to be about. I'm going to try to convince you all procedural fans what is so special about these handcrafted Sudoku. Second, how do constructors like myself make these Sudoku? And finally, the question is Sudoku a roguelike? So we'll figure out how that all ties back in. So let's get started with an abridged history of this current puzzle boom. Sudoku was kind of popularized by the Japanese publisher Nicoli, who is known for actually creating handcrafted pencil puzzles of a variety of genres. They popularized it, and it sort of became popular in the US and the UK newspapers using these computer-generated methods because it's extremely easy to generate. Like, okay, you put one number in, does it break or not, and so on. And in fact, there's also been an existing puzzle community that loves solving these logic puzzles. And competitively, this is the World Sudoku Championship. It actually just happened a few days ago, I believe, or is now still going on. So out of this scene, two British gentlemen by the name of Simon Anthony and Mark Goodliffe decided to start a YouTube vlog where they solved first cryptic crosswords, which are these British really hard puzzle crosswords, and then they branched out into other puzzle types, including Sudoku, first doing computer-generated Sudoku from newspapers like The Times, and then branching out into doing puzzles um, from currently known setters, doing variants and handcrafted ones like that. And then in 2019, or sorry, 2020, something happened to the world that meant a lot of us were stuck indoors for a long time with nothing to do but watch YouTube videos. And a lot of people, for some reason or another, got sent by the YouTube algorithm to these two dudes solving Sudoku. And a sort of feedback would happen where people look at these puzzles and see the beautiful logic that people put into them and think, hey, this is cool. Maybe I can like solve these puzzles myself. And then it turns into maybe I can make a puzzle. And then asking the cracking the cryptid people that got them into it to try their puzzle. And for some people, that ended up being a dream come true, and their puzzle gets featured. And then those puzzles end up inspiring other people to join the community to create puzzles by themselves, I among them. And this community has kind of grown from that, other people making their own channels, their own streams, uh, making discords in order to discuss puzzles and fun stuff like that. Um, and so now that you know why this kind of community ended up taking place and all that, now I wanted to ask the question, why handcrafted Sudoku? What's so special about these puzzles that this group has kind of blossomed from this YouTube channel? Um, there's a couple of reasons that I wanted to talk about. The first of them being just the pure variety of puzzles on display, because we're not just talking about the standard Sudoku. There are a lot of variants that people use now. There are different chess variants where constrict the digits can't go into specified like a knight's move away from each other. This is called anti-knight. There are killer cages where the digits have to add up to a sum, arrows where you have to match the digit on the arrow, the sum to the digit in the circle, thermos that descend or ascend from the thermal bulb to the tip like a mercury thermometer, these dominant constraints where the cells separated by the different dots or x's or v's have to sum to different amounts or have to be in ratios or a sequence from each other. There are different lines where the digits have to form a consecutive set or have to differ by at least 5 or more. There are irregular Sudokus that don't have 3 by 3 regions, but have whatever regions you can think of. There are chaos constructions where the regions aren't even given, and you have to figure out the regions yourself using logic. There are Schrodinger cells where you have to use the digits from 0 to 9, and 2 of the digits are in a cell together in each row and column and box. And there are pencil puzzle combinations that mix in other Nicoli style pencil puzzles. For example, this one is called a yin yang, where you have to shade the cells in black or green, depending on a specific rule. And they also added fog of war to Sudoku, where the digits that you put in, if they're correct, reveal more fog and reveal more clues and such. So the Sudoku world has kind of gone very far from that very standard 1 to 9 restriction. And we're not even restricted to just that. It is literally whatever you can think of in order to make a puzzle. Because while a computer generator may be able to generate the 6 sextillion different classic Sudoku grids, only really a human can have the ingenuity to come up with something completely brand new and something interesting. Although I know some of you ProcGen people will want to try. But it's not just the having these rules and creating something off of them. For example, killer cages have been in newspaper puzzles for years with kind of the same sort of randomized, really basic constraint. You also need to have the ingenuity of the constructor in order to create these puzzles. For example, this is a pure killer puzzle called, I believe it's called Leapfrog by Jovial and Echoes, where the idea is there's a really complicated idea here where you have to really keep track of the way that certain digits appear in the first 5 rows. And you know that certain digits have to be in certain cages, and that restricts where they appear in the grid. And that sort of leapfrogs into deductions about other digits, and you have to fill in the Sudoku grid that way. And it's and even in classic Sudoku, people have been able to make like new, interesting deductions that even like a computer needs to be able to brute force, but a human will be able to like solve logically. This is a puzzle called arbitrary code execution, where in the middle rows you have these 7, 8, 9 triples, where you can actually color them, and based on the coloring, you can figure out which one is a 7 based on how it appears, where it can appear on the third row. So even in these really defined genres, people have been able to come up with new and exciting things, new and exciting logic. There is a Sudoku metagame. People come up with new theorems all the time. People build up on the theorems that other people have created, interfacing and being inspired by other people's puzzles, which kind of brings us to the third thing that I wanted to talk about, which is the community, the communication between setters and among puzzles. Because in a computer-generated Sudoku, there isn't really a set path. You kind of just stumble upon other places. Maybe something will work, something won't. There's not really a story there. Puzzles set by humans have a sort of flow to them. There is a sort of break-in, a core thing that you want people to realize about the puzzle, a core deduction, and then from there it develops into a story about a flow from where that initial break-in leads you, and ending up in like a situation where you have to resolve the final digits in. It's a form of storytelling. Every puzzle made by a human has a certain story the person wants to tell. Maybe the story is this seemingly impossible scenario, this paradoxical scenario actually has a solution. Maybe that story is, I've discovered a new theorem, and this puzzle is my way of showing everyone interactively how to use that theorem. Or the story can just be like, I want to troll my friends into solving a puzzle, a Sudoku with square roots in it. Because who would ever do that? And it's just not just the story within the puzzle, but the overall communication of the community as well. Like I said, people work off of each other, create puzzles, are inspired by other people in that community and create stuff, make puzzles because they want to see other types of puzzles that other people create. In kind of procedural spaces, you look towards the procedurality as a way to generate more content, a way to generate more playtime. But in like our handcrafted community, we have essentially like hundreds of hours of playtime because the community is so big and everyone just makes new and interesting things and works off of each other and communicates that way. So hopefully now I've convinced you all that this is cool and that you want to join the puzzle community and start solving and making puzzles. So how do you actually do that? How do you actually make a handcrafted Sudoku? Well, for one thing, it is a lot of watching, a lot of solving, looking up videos and trying to figure out. I think this was one of the first cracking the cryptid videos I've ever like seen and tried to solve myself. Following along, trying to figure out bits of logic that you can, and then referencing the video to see if to see the parts that you can't figure out. And once you kind of have build an intuition for like what works and what doesn't, you kind of have build a logical intuition. You have to have an idea. This can be, what happens if I draw this squiggle or a pattern in this grid with this type of line constraint? What happens if I combine these two types of constraints together in a certain way? Can I take this type of puzzle, this constraint that someone else has made, and modify or obfuscate it in some way that leads to a more complex or interesting puzzle? And once you have that idea, you have to follow through. You have to, excuse me, you have to make the Sudoku resolve in some interesting way. How do you take that breaking that you've created and turn it into interesting deductions based around that theme? If you've made a couple of different contraptions of different digits, how do you arrange those two in a satisfying way where they interact off of each other? Sometimes you put something in and it breaks and you have to backtrack and realize maybe that logic does something interesting and that's something that you want other people to find. But in the end, it's always the question of like, what would I want to see in the world? What kind of puzzles do I want to solve and create and see other people solve? And that directs a lot of what you create in a puzzle. And there's this really interesting thing that happens because of the way that, you know, math and logic works, where sometimes it doesn't feel like you are creating a puzzle. It feels like you're discovering it. You kind of you set the rules for the world, and then the universe just generates all the possible worlds, and you are traversing those generated worlds to find something that works and is pleasing for others to look like. It's like finding a planet on No Man's Sky that's interesting and telling other people about it. or a Minecraft world, Minecraft seed that's interesting and telling people about it. I don't know how No Man's Sky works. I've never played it. I hope that's how it works. But you are kind of co-constructing with a universe, and that's one cool way that I think it relates back to roguelikes. But because of the way that logic works, and because a lot of these things are hard to see for a human, sometimes constructors rely on tools in order to help them make good puzzles. This is a tool called fpuzzles that has a bunch of constraints built into it that a lot of constructors use, that along with a script called the Ranks Sudoku solver made by the constructor Ranks, which has a lot of logic for a lot of different clues in it. And what I'm going to do now is actually a live demo, and we are going to construct a Sudoku together in fpuzzles. So we're going to connect, and we're going to, I'm going to make these German whispers clues, which are kind of these lines where the puzzle digits have to differ by at least 5. And I'm going to try to make like an @ sign, like the roguelike convention symbol. Where does the @ go? Okay, so let's see, that goes here. And let's see, this isn't breaking so far. Okay, this breaks, so I'm not going to do that. Let's see, here. All right, there's an @ sign. I think there was like an exclamation mark, so I'm going to use a thermometer for that. Okay, and it resolves a little bit. Can I add another one here? Okay, that breaks. Maybe a small one. It doesn't like that. Let's do a couple of things here. Okay, that resolves a lot. Can I make this work? Okay, that resolves it more. Let's see. Yeah, okay, we did it. We made a Sudoku, and I'm going to share this in the obelisk. But so we did it. We made a handcrafted Sudoku. That was extremely easy. It took like 2 minutes of my talk. Well, there's something kind of wrong here. And that's that this Sudoku kind of feels procedural. Like I didn't go through that logic myself. It didn't have anything about what I said about an intended solution path. Like I kind of just doodled in the grid and was like, okay, the computer said this resolved. It feels procedural. There are like small disambiguators. There was little X's I added that don't meaningfully add to the logic in any way. They're just there because I needed it to resolve at the end. So it is possible to make handcrafted puzzles that feel procedural. Even though I drew everything in the grid myself, I decided where everything goes. It feels like one of those. I bet if you solved it, it would solve like one of those newspaper Sudokus that you'd find or on like an airport gift shop. So if that's not how we use tools, how do we actually use them? One way that I've seen tools used, and I've used myself, is the shortcutting of bad paths. This is a chaos construction that I've made called Get Up on the Hydra's Back. And the idea is that you draw these hydrae in the grid. The regions, there are specific cells that determine what kinds of, how many of a certain type of like polyomino region appears in the grid. And while I was making this, I created the regions, and eventually I need to resolve the final pieces of logic, the final region logic, and I ended up using this fpuzzles generator to try out a couple of possible combinations and figure out which ones worked and which ones didn't. But I eventually had to actually make the logic myself to make sure that the solver is steered towards the combination, the region logic that made sense and actually worked to a solution and made sure that was unique. Another way that that constructors use tools is to just explore the problem space. There actually is nothing wrong with drawing and doodling on the grid as long as you use that in order to derive actual human derivable logic. This is another puzzle I made that actually got featured by Cracking the Cryptic called Too Many Arrows Spoil the Box. The conceit of it is that there are all these arrows that point into the central location of the Sudoku, because I thought that would be a funny thing to make. And I added an anti-night constraint, which is the thing where the digits and nights move can't be the same. And the solver told me that this ended up with the digits of the diagonals of the center square being even and on the orthogonal cells being odd. And I was like, wait, this is weird. Why does this happen? So I went back and I kind of intuited or reasoned out the logic of why that happened. And it turned out to be like a really cool logic involving the way that digits circle around the grid um, and how they had to be placed. And so I decided to turn it into a full puzzle. And then to resolve it, I also used the solver to try out a bunch of possible combinations and saw which ones worked, which ones didn't. And the one that I ended up going with, I also had to go back and figure out that, oh, this is actually really interesting logic for a human to solve. It turns out that the two digits that are highlighted in red have to be the same if you put that arrow there. And because they have to be the same, the only way they work for the way the arrow sums worked, they both have to be a 3, and that ends up resolving the entire grid. And at this point that I've talked about how I personally have used these tools, it is time to talk about the Miracle Sudoku. This was a puzzle that was towards the earlier run of Cracking the Cryptic's popularity. It is their like second most popularly watched video, and it is a Sudoku with only 2 digits in the grid, a 1 and a 2, and a bunch of rules saying the digits can't be a chess move, a chess king's move, or a knight's move away from each other, and can't be consecutive. And the conceit of this puzzle is that these restrictions are actually a lot more restrictive than you let on, and you can actually whittle down from the 1s and the 2s to the 3s to the 4s and counting up how the digits have to be arranged in the grid and whittle down like where they go. And if you've never watched the Cracking the Cryptic solve of it, please do. It is an amazing video, and the solver Simon goes through like an entire hero's journey where he goes from like the refusal of the call, like, no, I'm closing this video, this can't solve, to like, wait, actually, this might be able to solve, and then like filling everything in. So I'm gonna give another demo, and I'm gonna recreate the Miracle Sudoku. So we are going to connect, and we're going to include use the solver to include all the different constraints that are in the Miracle Sudoku, and just pick 2 random numbers. So let's see, a 6 here, and there we go. This is a Miracle Sudoku. We just made that. We can submit it to Cracking the Cryptic and get millions of views and puzzle fame. But that's not exactly correct, because it turns out that there are really only 1 or 2 different possible solutions for the Miracle Sudoku, up to isomorphism for you math nerds out there. And so the idea of the puzzle isn't that like any particular combination is an interesting puzzle. It's the fact that this puzzle can exist at all. These rules are so restrictive that they only need 2 given digits, and the first person to figure that out was able to capitalize on it and share that with the world and show people that that's an interesting fact. This is another example called 178 by the constructor Glipperl. And the conceit of this puzzle is that all the question marks are literal little killer clues that count the digits along the day, that sum the digits in the diagonal, and the only rule in the puzzle is that the sum of all the question marks add to 178. And that seems like an impossible thing until you realize that you can just highlight all the cells that are part of that diagonal, counting the ones that are double counted, minimize them, and turns out that adds up to exactly 178. And from there, you can fill in the digits and fill in the entire Sudoku from there. And there's a really interesting channel called Miraster who is also a setter, but he also interviews a lot of other setters. And he interviewed Flipperl, who talks about the way that he set his puzzle. And that is by essentially using this F-puzzle solver to try a bunch of different combinations. And eventually, when he got to a situation where it was almost, he almost got it to work, but didn't feel it wasn't just right. So he ended up writing a program to generate a bunch of different combinations. Ended up with like 4 different solutions that worked, and then picked the one that had the most beautiful solve path. And in this case, in these 2 cases I showed you, these are essentially procedural puzzles that feel handcrafted. They are puzzles that are essentially generated by a computer for the most part, but a human editor had to go, 1, write the program themselves, and 2, had to curate which of those puzzles actually made it into they wanted to show to the world, to show that this interesting thing, this very constrained thing, actually had a solution. And so what I'm getting at is that handcrafted versus procedural isn't a binary, it is a spectrum. You can create handcrafted puzzles by doodling stuff on the grid that feel procedural, that don't really have any interesting logic or intuition in there. And you can make puzzles on a computer using procedural generation, and then because of the way that you do it, curate that in order to have a puzzle that has an interesting solve path. And I think this is something that goes into games as well. In the end, don't want humans want to communicate with other humans. They want to uh, tell a story and listen to a story, and experience art created by other people, whether that art is through the medium of books or movies or games or puzzles in this case. Um, and whether that story is, look at this cool theorem I found, the story is, this is a set storyline with a beginning and ending that I want everyone to go through, or even if that story is, this is a wild experience that anything can happen and you have to adjust to it. Um, and I think the puzzle community brings an interesting micro study, a microcosm of a world that is increasingly faced with the big questions about the role of automation and AI in their lives. Because Sudoku is kind of this genre, this subset where computer generated essentially chaff floods the market, and that's kind of how most people know it. But even in that like really bleak reality, there are people who actually seek out art made by other people and seek out experiences made by other people. But at the same time, it is a sad reality because while many like publishers can turn a quick buck by publishing a book of like hundreds of randomly generated Sudoku, a lot of us in the setter community do this for free, do it as a side hobby, or are trying to make ends meet using Patreons or using other jobs. Um, and so with that kind of sad note, we get to the ultimate question, which is Sudoku a roguelike? To which the answer is no, not really. But I think there's still a lot that the roguelike community and the procedural community can learn about why people like these handcrafted puzzles, which is why this has been a defense of handcrafted Sudoku. Yep, my name is Alison. I am on tesseralis.site is my website, and that's also my Blue Sky handle. I am at Tesseralis on pretty much all other uh, social media. And yeah, please check out the puzzle community. I would love for more people to go into it. Yeah, check out Cracking the Cryptic and those other channels. Check out Discords. Find setters that you like and support them. And yeah, that has been my defense.
Wow, thank you so much. This was really cool. Like I had no idea. Uh, this is like Sudoku in a fundamentally different way than I've ever experienced it, and I'm here for it. Okay, so maybe have time for one question, and then we gotta head off to the breakout rooms. How about what was the most interesting message that you received from solving a puzzle?
Oh my God. That's a really hard one.
It may be
I have
difficult to come up with off the cuff.
I think the most interesting ones are ones that like there's a sort of genre of like one those are the messages that kind of reveal something very fundamental about actually learn like new theorems of mathematics from solving a Sudoku puzzle, and have to like learn, okay, the digits from 1 to 9 have this like really interesting property, like for example, I think there's like a certain set of puzzles that have like different cages, but they all sum to like 14. Uh, and you actually have to like learn stuff about the number of ways that you can sum uh, to 14 using the digits from 1 to 9 that is like really interesting and cool, and like you sort of figure that out from like uh, determining how the different sums interplay with the different like cages and stuff like that. I'll share it in the obelisk or something, if I find, but those are the kind of things that I like to see and I find are really cool.
That is super cool.
Uh,
Uh, cool. Well, thank you again. Thank you so much.